Hello, everybody, and welcome to the How to Win with AI Shipping Valuable Iterations Fast webinar. Figured we'll give everyone maybe 30 more seconds here and then we can get rolling. Aaron, Kyle, are you seeing my screen all right?
We gotcha. Yes, I am.
Perfect. Well, let's get it kicked off here. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time on your Wednesday to join us. For those in the Denver area, I know there's Boulder Startup Week going on, and so lots of good sessions there, and we appreciate you taking some time with us. We're going to get started with just some, simple housekeeping items, and then we'll get into the agenda here. So we'll be answering questions at the end. So you can use the Q&A functionality in the Zoom webinar interface to ask any questions you have, and we'll make sure we address them at the end. And then also this webinar is being recorded. So we'll share a recording of the webinar in a follow-up email, and just a general FYI that is happening. So our agenda for today, we've got a couple of sections. We're going to start with some introductions, of course. We'll introduce the panelists here and Crafted as a company where we all work. And then we'll get into strategy, how-to, and outcomes. So in the strategy section, we'll talk why a Gen AI chatbot. In the how-to, we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of a project that we're going to introduce here shortly, and kind of a case study that's really going to help us talk through how we are embracing Gen AI at Crafted and have actually designed and shipped a solution in the space. So we'll talk about choosing an LLM. We'll talk about prompt engineering and QA, why name a chatbot, usability testing, all that good stuff. And then at the end, we'll share some outcomes. So what have we learned so far? And what was the actual outcome of this initiative that we'll be talking about, and a little bit about how Crafted can help you all get started as well. So let's start with who we are. So we all work for Crafted. Crafted is a product development consultancy, and we really partner with growth stage companies struggling to build and ship software fast. So we've got product managers, designers, and engineers that add additional horsepower to your team immediately and also integrate and embed with your team to help deliver solutions that scale. So our quick iterative development cycles really ensure you'll see ROI even before your first invoice. So that's a little bit about us. And now a little bit more about the panelists here. So my name is Matt Markowitz. I'm a product manager here at Crafted. I've got over 6 years of experience in the software space, managing and shipping software initiatives. And specifically in this like artificial intelligence and machine learning space, I started about 5 years ago with machine learning, and we were doing some like wind turbine detection solutions, as well as, a little bit later in my career doing some auto categorization of agenda topics with machine learning. And then really this past year, I've been focused on diving into Gen AI, understanding it, using it both as a workflow tool and also helping design and ship the initiative that we'll be talking about today. I will hand it over to Kyle to introduce himself next.
Hey, y'all. I'm Kyle. I'm our head of engineering based here in Denver, Colorado. Very excited for this session today. Like Matt said, thanks for hopping on. I've been in software since about 2011 and just enjoyed the wild ride through the whole spectrum. Been doing AI and ML, not necessarily training from the ground up, but bringing a lot of solutions to market, both at Twilio, my previous company, and now here. So it's really exciting to see what generative AI is capable of, and excited to kind of bring some of our learnings to y'all today. I'll give it over to you, Aaron.
Hey, Nice to pleasure to have you all here with us. My name is Aaron Knoll. I'm the head of design here at Crafted. I've been in the design space for about 20 years, but most notably, I've been working as a researcher and a designer on AI and ML solutions since at least 2017, including at startups and some large enterprises. So very excited to share a little bit about what we've learned here with all of y'all today.
All right. And then I have one more person I wanted to introduce as well, just to give some context to, what we'll be talking about. When we dive in the nitty gritty and we mentioned Sage, we took on a project here at Crafted to build a Gen AI chatbot. And so wanted to introduce Sage really quick, Crafted expert in Gen AI chatbot, and we'll share a lot more coming here soon, but that is the context, kind of the case study we'll be talking about here today. So we wanted to start off with strategy. So really, begin with the why, like good software developers we are, and a little glossary.
Cool. Yeah, I'll take over here. So Gen AI, when we say that, it's an abbreviation of generative AI. These are models trained on massive data sets. Think internet scale, billions and billions of data points. They're designed to learn patterns and generate new content based on that training data. Won't get too into the weeds, but they're statistical, non-deterministic. And a lot of the value that they bring to the market is this generative capability of taking input patterns and creating outputs based on the patterns and the data that it's seeing. Large language models, or LLMs, are a text-focused subset of Gen AI models, excelling at language-related tasks such as summarization, translation, and question answering. That's specifically what the subset of generative AI that we'll be using and talking about here. Prompt engineering, the process of designing and optimizing prompts to get high quality and relative responses from LLMs. Similar to the training data for any machine learning model or AI model, garbage in, garbage out. As you increase the quality of inputs, in this case, prompt engineering, and you play with the different ways that you can get the Gen AI LLMs to be producing outputs, that prompt engineering of the inputs can really drastically alter the quality of outputs and outcomes for users and stakeholders. And one last one, MVP, minimum viable product. In this case, we did bring a chatbot to market. We'll be talking about MVP a little bit here. I think it's always helpful and inclusive to just kind of define those terms and level set going into a presentation. Oh, we are curious, and I'd love some audience participation here in the poll. We'll love to know kind of in what ways are you leveraging Gen AI on your team. Could be LLMs, chatbots, could be any of the other use case, image, video. Very curious just to see what people are using and building out there, because we're applying Gen AI to a lot of different domains at Crafted, and we're curious.
Awesome. And so we'll revisit those poll results here in a second while y'all are replying. Next up here, we want to really dive into the strategy piece a bit further. So why a Gen AI chatbot? All of us here in this room work for some sort of company that falls into one of three camps right now. And just want to level set and kind of understand AI is here. And it puts us all in one of three places, one of three camps. Camp one, bottom left corner, life is good. We are hanging out. We're enjoying the great outdoors. There's no huge threat, but we're kind of alert and monitoring, right? We're watching the stars, trying to see when that shooting star comes by, and see when we might need to jump in and get more involved, or when it might become more disruptive for our business. Camp number two, we're comfortable, but we're hungry and need to prepare for the future. We've got a bunch of kiddos running around. We've mobilized maybe a little bit, we built a little raft. We're out there in the water swimming around with AI, and we're casting a few lines to try to figure out, where could there be delightful features we could build for our users, or where could there be extra value add. Or we're camp three, we're not okay. AI is here and the competition is coming for our lunch and our comfort. They're coming for us. And so we've got the competition in our campsite. AI is just really disruptive. And so as you see here, right, level of disruption, action required, nothing too surprising there, but think about which camp you're in. And we'll also learn a little bit more, from the poll. And so, where are we at with Crafted? So we just want to level set, right? Crafted, there was not a burning need. We don't have like millions of visitors visiting our website, like asking us questions, right? We didn't necessarily need this chatbot for sales, but what we are is a cutting edge product development consultancy, constantly getting asked by our clients about AI strategy, deploying Gen AI, how do we do QA, how do we choose this model or that model. And so, we fall more in the level of like, between camps 2 and 3, where, there is disruption in the consulting industry. But, we're not completely, underwater at the moment. So we're embracing AI. There's some action required. And so this chatbot, this initiative was one of our lines. So we're in the raft casting lines right now. And so now that, we've had a chance to cast some lines, our entire team understands the space better, and we're able to actually evaluate AI and with our clients a lot further. And so if you're in one of those camps, right, you're probably looking to leadership and asking them, what do we do next? And, rightfully so, this technology is so new that there's a knowledge gap, even at the leadership level. So these statistics are referencing a poll by Deloitte, where they surveyed 2,800 director to C-suite level respondents across 6 industries and 16 countries, and found that 75% of executives expect Gen AI to transform their organization within the next 3 years. They're in camps 2 or 3. But 87% of those folks don't feel equipped themselves to transform the business with it. So if we're looking to leadership for some answers, right, they're also, out there getting educated, and I'm sure we've got some of those folks here today. So wanted to just talk to the kind of problem space, a little bit here. And oh goodness, do I have the polls up now? Or are you guys still seeing?
You've got
seeing
the
the
slides. Yep.
My apologies. I clicked on the poll results. It opens up a new window. So I'm just taking a look at those here. So in what ways are we leveraging AI in the audience? We're seeing a chatbot in the chat, not in our product, but it is on our roadmap, mainly focused on productivity. They're using ChatGPT to generate filler text for UIs. Not at all, not yet in the recruiting space. RAG, proofread my crappy writing. So it's amazing to see that we're embracing Gen AI out there, and it seems to be we're in one of those 3 camps. So why a Gen AI chatbot project? Why are we here? Why are we talking about this? This was an amazing initiative for us for a few different reasons, and we wanted to share why. So at Crafted, we really believe in learning by building. So not a surprise that actually designing and shipping software to solution will help you, or shipping software to production will help you learn the most. So we wanted to do that and wanted to get started somewhere. Gen AI, just the new solution space, offers a ton, super fast time to value. So we're able to stand up a really quick POC with this chatbot project, and able to iterate even faster once we got into actually shipping the solution. One thing that's interesting here too, right, is there's both internal and external value to be had leveraging Gen AI as a chatbot feature. If your external strategy isn't quite ready yet, if you're an executive getting educated and trying to figure out what it means for your organization, there's also internal value to be had where your team could be actually embracing AI, shipping AI, and creating internal value. So, you could be training a chatbot on your help articles, on your onboarding materials, user research transcripts, HR documentation, developer documentation, all those things, making that information more available and easier to query internally provides a ton of value. Lastly, a Gen AI chatbot is trained on your data. So some of us may be familiar with chatbots of old where you need to really configure it and set it up, make sure it's like in line with your branding, make sure it's in line with your voice of your company. But when you use a Gen AI technology and just train it directly off of your own company's data, that voice and that brand is built right in, and we'll show that a little bit here soon with Crafted's branding. And so lastly, one of the most important insights that we learned while diving into this project is that designing, shipping generative AI kind of forced our entire team, all disciplines, to really embrace AI, both to like level up our efficiency, as well as actually learn what it takes to actually ship this to production, right? What it means to QA, you know, how to test it, how to design it, whether or not we name it, all the things we're going to get into in the how-to. It was a huge takeaway for us. So highly encourage y'all, if you are considering where to get started with AI, that a Gen AI chatbot could be a great place to start.
Cool. So I'll hop in here, try to peek just under the covers a little bit from the engineering and talk about some of the high-level concepts in the generative AI space, so we kind of level set where we are and what we landed on. Matt, if you could go to the next one. Cool. And so there's this diagram at the bottom. There's a whole spectrum of solutions and kind of like levels, I would say, of the generative AI space. I think that Databricks, this source image that I have here, really just quickly highlights that there is a spectrum. So prompt engineering, lowest complexity, lowest compute intensiveness, pre-training from scratch, aka you have $100 million lying around and 30,000 GPUs. You can make and open source your own HIP llama there, as we've got on the bottom right of the screen. That's kind of more the Meta and Google scale of AI. We're certainly, because we want our data and our voice coming out of this chatbot somewhere in the middle, we ultimately did choose a flavor of RAG, but there is something called fine tuning, where you can take you can take a large language model and then augment it after the pre-training phase. If you need, responsiveness, or you have an insane amount of data, maybe you're in like the law or the finance space, you don't want to pre-train it, but you want to take it a step further into fine tuning. We landed in the RAG space, and we actually evaluated Amazon Q and OpenAI's API. And that's kind of the flavor of building in the cloud and integrating an API, having our own data baked into it, but not, going beyond prompt engineering so we get more customization, but not going all the way down, stepping into the fine tuning and training space. You can go to the next one here, Matt. So what is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation? So in our case, what that meant with the OpenAI API assistant was we took our website, formatted it into, Amazon Q Business actually will scrape and crawl your website on your own behalf. We did that. It structures the data, vectorizes it into a data set here in the first column. It is more expensive to have them maintain those indices and continuously update and refresh that data. We are trying to go quick and lean, and the API was a little easier to work with for OpenAI's API assistant. And you just download your website as a PDF and fire it into OpenAI's assistant, and it starts marching you along. This image right here is specifically the kind of like self-hosted vector database, and doing a lot of that vectorization and embedding on your own. OpenAI API's assistant actually does a lot of that for us, so that we get a lot of the benefits, but we can go to market quickly. We went from 0 to production in under a month in this case. But it is important, I think, to know some of the underlying concepts of, gathering your data, making sure you have the right data going in. You're also not putting sensitive data in. There are security considerations there. OpenAI's API assistant abstracts a lot of the complexity of this away from us. But the one thing that I want to try to hammer home in the LLM inference step 4 of this diagram is that users are asking questions of our chatbot, and there are multiple things going on under the hood, which Matt's going to talk a little bit about later. But one of those is a prefetch of data that's relevant to the question that the user is asking out of that vector database. And it's augmenting from that source data and using all the power of generative AI, but scoping it in very specifically to our context, our data, our use case, so that we have some preceded information into the ultimate like LLM input that results in a question being answered. That whole process happens, in addition to the actual user query. There's that RAG process, and then there's even some additional prompting instructions that get layered onto it. So there's a lot going on under the hood. We're not hosting our own vector database. We're not vectorizing the data, but it is happening on our behalf from OpenAI's Assistant API so that we get the specific value out of that pretty quickly. Matt, I'll give it back to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Just a reminder, Kyle is a source of technical information. Toss any questions you have into the Q&A function, and we'll get to those at the end. Right now, we've got another poll. So I want to get a pulse from the audience again. Do we have any hands-on experience with prompt engineering? And so, curious, what kind of levels of prompt engineering experts we have in the room as I dive into it a bit further here next. So I'll leave that poll up for a second as I dive into this. So prompt engineering versus instructions. So prompt engineering, as Kyle defined at the start of the presentation, is just prompting an LLM to get the information that you want. And as Kyle's referring to in the kind of RAG implementation of Gen AI, there's typically some instructions that get pre-fed into a query as well. And so specifically, when we're setting up our chatbot, Sage, in ChatGPT's assistant interface, so if you're using an assistant API, you can actually preset a bunch of instructions. And so what these instructions do is they get paired up with the prompt from the user and then sent to the LLM. So the instructions get sent with every single prompt as a user is interacting with the chatbot. And so there's a ton of opportunity here to really influence the user experience, iterate and try to improve, the conversationalness of the chatbot. And so I want to share, the various ways that we iterated from, A to E here in this example on our instructions for the chatbot. So there's a few different things, right? At the very top, if you're looking at iteration A in the red box, you can designate a role for your chatbot. So we played around with this. Aaron and I spent a lot of time kind of A/B testing, is a marketing persona the better role, or is a salesperson the better role? And what types of response does that elicit when we try, one or the other? And so heavily emphasize A/B testing these types of things. And we ended up on salesperson. So if you see on the right here, iteration E, pretend you're a salesperson, we ended up sticking with that. You can also help prevent hallucinations. So hallucinations probably, a term to be defined as well, but that's when a chatbot is just going out and just making, not making stuff up, but sort of like, you've given it instructions, you've given it a data set, but it still has the lateral ability to go out and, find data and put it together for your responses. And so we found in the instructions, like, if we just say do not hallucinate, that prevented like 90 to 95% of hallucinations. We still see them sometimes. Aaron found a funny one when he was testing one time that said, Debbie Greenfield replaced him as head of design at Crafted when asking, who's the head designer at Crafted. And so, we found some funny things in there, but you can control hallucinations with instructions. You can set the tone. So not only is the Gen AI chatbot trained on your data and will, elicit your tone, But you can also tell it, kind of how you want it to respond in here. So we want it to be friendly but professional. You can control its conciseness. So we wanted a concise answer because we knew we just have a small chatbot interface. So we started with just saying, please provide concise, and then actually gave it a more specific 100-word or less limit later. Learned that through usability testing that Aaron will talk about. You can give it some context. So, here, assume this person knows about software and tech, but doesn't know much about Crafted. You can give it some standard endings. So if you look at the bottom right here on iteration E in the green box, every single response on our chatbot will say, hey, if you want more information, contact us. And so we really believe, if the user wants to talk to a human, let them talk to a human. And so we give them that reply in each one. And then because this is, a lead gen, right, tool for us, that's really the outcome we're trying to drive, is learn more about what people are curious about Crafted, so we can tailor our content and our thought leadership. But also, like, if you're interested, we'd love to get in touch with you. And so we ask you to leave an email. And so in the instructions, you can say, thank you for your email. Crafted team will be in touch soon every time an email is sent to your LLM. And so, how I really embraced AI here was really through the A/B testing process and collaborating with my teammates to learn, like, what does different instructions and different prompts elicit from your LLM. And so moving forward here, and so actually really quick, I want to reference, let's see, I'm going to end this poll here. We've got 6% pros, 59% with some experience, and 35% with no experience. So thank you very much for your feedback, and hopefully some of this information will be helpful. Let me know if you've got any questions about any specifics here, but thank you for your candor and responses there. And so moving on to the next slide, I've talked a little bit about QA and rapid iteration, and really what I want to stress here is there's all kinds of variables and net new variables with Gen AI. So typically in the QA process, right, you might regression test different roles. You might regression test, feature flag on, feature flag off. But in Gen AI, it's a little bit different, right? First of all, there's a data set. So if you look at my blue boxes, that's where I'm going to start. Data 1.1, that's also called the corpus. So your corpus is your data set that your LLM and your chatbot's going to reference to help provide answers to your users. And so as you see here, as we've iterated across data 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so what you can do is actually go and edit and reformat the data. And one thing I learned, just a quick story is, I originally, we just trained this off of all of our website data, right? Everything that we had educating users on Crafted, and just dumped it all in there, plain text, right? No formatting or anything like that. And as we were testing this out and looking at different responses, I went in and tried something, and that was actually putting headers on the various blocks of data. So like, this is a case study from this user, or this is what Crafted does. And I found actually that adding those headers to the corpus actually made the responses better, which was super interesting insight for us. And so, you're kind of like teaching this LLM, hey, here's the answer. And if you make it easier for the LLM to find the answer, you get better results. A couple of other things, right? We've got instructions. So I was just talking about instructions on the last slide. I won't belabor that one. We've got questions. This is an important one for us because if you want your brand to be represented well, you want it to answer, some common questions and good questions about your company well. And so we predefined 4 questions to start that were like, we got to nail these 4 questions. And as we iterated over time, we saw how changing these other variables changed those answers to those questions. And then we added questions over time as well, as you see in the bottom right corner. And so a couple of the other things that we've toyed with a little bit that aren't as representative in this, Miro screenshot is you can change the model. So one thing that's interesting and how I've embraced AI more is I'm much more in tune with when OpenAI is releasing new models now. You can change the temperature and top p-value. And so I'm not going to go into those too deep right now, but really those are little levers you have in OpenAI's interface that controls how variable the answers will be. So a higher temperature means that the LLM has more room for variability. Lower temperature means it's going to be a lot more precise and an answer based on your stuff, on the instructions and data provided. And so my last point that I want to talk about in this realm is that is obviously a very lean way to start with a QA process. There are also tools out there, and to be completely frank, we haven't quite gotten there in our experience just yet. But there are tools to scale this to the next level, right? You've got a team, you've got multiple models, you want a quantitative way to evaluate these faster. There are tools out there, and one that we've surfaced is PromptLayer that we're looking into. I can't fully endorse this just yet, but playing around with it, it's got a lot. It's talking to a lot of the pain points that we're starting to experience as we scale QA.
So one of these things is not like the others. If you, like me, were kind of raised on Sesame Street, you might remember this little sketch right here. So both Matt and Kyle have talked a lot about instructions. So when we talk about naming something like a chatbot, when these things first emerged on the marketplace, like naming was a tool that kind of like engaged a user's like mental model of, say, a person, and it kind of was shorthand for explaining to a user how they were expected to interact with it. Let me just share another story from my experience about naming an AI tool. Users expect high accuracy, right? We maybe have unfair expectations of the technology we're interacting with. Unsurprisingly, as many of you who've worked with AI and ML models before know, oftentimes our work doesn't quite meet the user's high bar. In this example, one thing we did was rather than saying the tool, the technology said this, we gave the tool a name. And it had an interesting, funny effect on how our users described the outputs and how they perceived the data they were getting. No, it was still not meeting their high bar of accuracy, but they began to be a little bit more empathetic, maybe even joking that the tool by this name was having a bad day. In other words, naming changed the way kind of people perceived the technology behind it. And so I'm curious about, I saw a couple of you mentioned in our poll earlier that you also had chatbots. I'm curious, how you have kind of contended with naming. Naming can be a little bit contentious of sorts. And honestly, we have to, we can also recognize like this pivot, like users' mental models are changing and name is less important because users are more used to interacting with tools like chatbots. But we did choose to name ours, and there's another final reason why we did. And this kind of gets into shorthand for instructions and users' mental models. If we just put the word crafted on our website, you might expect that there was a human. As Matt pointed out, we are a small consultancy. We do not have a person on the other end of a chatbot at all hours a day. So we wanted to clearly communicate to that user and not misrepresent that. So what's the shorthand? An anthropomorphized character. Enter Sage. So you've probably seen the image of Sage, and I think Matt, we have a couple more images of Sage. So we did we leveraged AI tools to generate this image. I wish I could say I designed this cute crow myself. I did not. But we aim to prompt it for a gender neutral and very specifically, why an anthropomorphized character, right? We wanted to make sure it was not a person. We wanted to align with people's mental models of fictional characters and birds. I believe your mental model of a bird is not that there's going to actually be a crow pecking out responses to you. So as you can see from this image, when we listed the opening for an AI chatbot, like many of you who have jobs out there, you get a lot of applications. A few of the crows on the left, compelling applicants. Did not end up being the one we went with. We went with the one on the right here. But so the story I like design here is like there's a little bit of kind of like intentionality about how we wanted to communicate a clear instruction without cluttering the interface with it. also inject a little bit of like humor and levity into the moment right here. But let me talk about like another aspect of design. Oftentimes, usability testing. So usability testing is when you put your product in front of someone, you determine whether a user can complete tasks successfully and independently. We wanted to know how our chatbot worked within the context of how people might be expecting to interact with a consultancy. So we reviewed our hypotheses a little bit through this test. And so we talk about building in public. Like, this is going to be on our site. This is going to be in front of real users, like real potential leads. So we wanted to de-risk our launch. Building in public doesn't mean you need to skip feedback or risk putting in front of users things that might break trust, or worse, like misrepresent us and potentially cost us a future partnership, right? So we leveraged an inexpensive remote testing platform called UserBob. $1 per minute per user. Usually turns around tests in a day. If you've ever seen it, the interface is not the most beautiful. However, it's very functional for very quickly putting something in front of users and gathering data. So I'd encourage you, build in public, but doesn't mean take unnecessary risks with your business and, in our case, potential leads. So we'll just kind of share a couple broad little insights we got from the feedback right here. So you can kind of see this on our on our kind of testing environment. User T said it just kind of feels like word soup. There's so much information right here. And you can see the chat window on the right. Sage's response was pushing the boundaries of the chat window we had. We had some similar feedback from another user who was a little bit more particular about kind of the language we're using. You shouldn't have to give me 100 words to tell what you do. A hands-on collaborative approach, trust building. It's just a bunch of keywords. These are words we use on our site when we talk about us, but it was interesting like that the way Sage was returning them, it felt like they were just spitting out a bunch of buzzwords right there. So you can kind of see a little bit of Matt shared a little bit of how we kind of refined our setup of Sage to adjust for that. And here's another user right here. And I thought this one was very interesting, right? Which was fantastic. I kind of want to know where, like, you've piqued my interest, you've shared an observation, but how do I know that? I kind of want proof. For good product reasons, we had to put citations a little bit further down the priority list. However, a really interesting insight here is that I don't just want to be told, I want you to show me. This user was craving to be shown the details that Sage was sharing with him.
Thank you, Aaron. And I'll just summarize some of those great insights Aaron was just sharing. So Aaron talked a lot when we did usability testing, right? We went out to UserBob and internal testing as well, and various friends and family. And what we learned, right? Like, the response structure and length and flow really mattered. That was some of the most common feedback. We also had feedback about speed, which was something that was just very clear, and we handled that pretty quickly. But some of the other insights that we saw was simple questions. A user, when you go and I think this stresses the importance of unmoderated usability testing. Somebody just using the product as they would and with very little instructions. They asked questions like, where's Crafted headquartered? When was Crafted founded, right? Trying to understand where we are, how long we've been around. And Sage did not answer those very well. And so that gave us the information to go back and actually iterate on our corpus, the data set that we use in the LLM. And so that was super interesting. Another thing was the confidence. Originally, Sage was answering, just pretty like, I think this is what Crafted does, or Crafted is doing this thing. And we're like, Sage, we really want you to be part of the team. Like, you're in with us. And so we made some different instructions iterations based on this feedback. So can't highlight enough how important that unmoderated usability testing was in learning some of these insights and much more. And it helped define the roadmap, it helped us iterate, etc. And so now that we've shared a little bit around the nitty gritty of the how-to, of course, there's all kinds of other things that we could dive into, but those were some of the most interesting insights. We want to talk a little bit about the outcomes. What did we learn? What is Sage actually driving for our business? And so a webinar wouldn't be complete without a good live demo, and fingers crossed, of course. But here is Sage, right? When you land on Crafted's website, here's our landing page. Sage pops up in the bottom right corner. You can pop Sage down and up. And so when you type in a question, Sage takes a second to think, and then we'll start kind of streaming back an answer. So one thing we love is, we've got all of our client reviews on our website. Sage can go access all those client reviews and give a quick overview of those client reviews. And so as you see here, we've got our kind of standard response, and you can go ahead and interact with Sage on crafted.solutions. Moving forward here, other outcomes.
So let's talk a little bit about what did we learn from Sage? And, as a, UX researcher, there's something very interesting about these as research tools to gain a little bit of insight into an audience that you don't often get to sit down face to face with, like cold leads, people who just stumble across our website. Who are they and what are they looking for? So just like our open position for AI assistant, we had quite a few people coming to our website looking for roles. Not hiring at the moment, hope to be soon, but Sage fielded a few questions from job prospects. More importantly, though, Sage did field several questions about our business and actually yielded some really interesting insights for us. Like, one, we are a startup. We do work with PE firms. How come Sage? We'll dig into that response in a second. People were looking for hourly rates. People were looking very specifically for interactions with oil and gas. And another person was coming here, was kind of asking Sage about staffing their teams. So let's take a look at like how Sage handled some of these questions that we frankly just didn't anticipate. Sage, appreciate the humility right here. Appears there wasn't information concerning PE firms. This is the kind of company that Crafted likes to work with right here. So what we learned was people were coming to our site looking for information on this, and we didn't have it here. And we do have that information, and we do have that in our collective experiences. So one, maybe this is an opportunity to refine not just our corpus, like, yes, we understand that's not in there, but really maybe revise some of the content on our website. So some actionable business outcomes here. Nextly, as many consultancies, Crafted does a little bit of like thought leadership, you can work with us, but also we want to kind of share our expertise widely with the community doing activities like this. So when someone came to our site asking, how many devs do I need to launch a SaaS product? I think Sage was totally on brand, like from a sales angle, like sharing like, yep, this is kind of a ratio we've seen effective. This is one way that, we like to partner with teams. But, more importantly, it gave us pause. Like, is this an opportunity to maybe create a little bit more, do we create content? Do we do a video kind of talking about not just what Crafted believes, but how could you staff up your SaaS product if you were building a team from scratch right here? So interesting insights into just this audience that we don't often get a chance to communicate with. So one, it's not only helping our sales up, our sales flow and helping us refine our content, as just a researcher, it is a valuable lens into an audience that otherwise might be quiet. So we're kind of, Sage is helping us pitch Crafted, but it's also helping us kind of form a roadmap for how might we better communicate and work with the people who are arriving at our website.
Cool. I Love it. Thanks, Matt and Aaron. I'm going to do my best to take us home here. What we covered. We talked a little bit about the strategy of why a Gen AI chatbot, levels of disruption, needs to move fast, or just observe. It was great seeing, the bell curve distribution of where people are using generative AI and chatbots, prompt engineering. It's a whole new suite of tools. We talked a little bit about choosing an LLM. Again, we went with OpenAI's API for AI assistance. There are a number of solutions out in market that are worth evaluating, and it's really quite easy with the cloud providers to evaluate a number of them quickly. We have another project where we were evaluating AI video processing and able to get a feel for that in under a day, right? Which is a very complex domain. So go out, test it out, sign up for these cloud providers, look at the market. That led us to our solution, right? Gen AI chatbots to get our hands dirty. Did a lot with prompt engineering, Gen AI QA. Named our chatbot as well, Sage, a new valuable member of the team. And then the usability testing, right? We are logging, questions and responses to our own database. There are still security concerns in the generative AI and LLM space. And I think one of the other key things I want to highlight here is we get to learn about people through this, but we still want to talk to you. This is not a replacement for relationships, human interaction. It's a tool to provide additional, and all of AI is really tools that helps bring some efficiency and scale to these interactions, but also move people into human conversations as we talk about, our let's collaborate. And so I always just try to reinforce that, right, of bringing people into the physical real world eventually once we get to those limits of generative AI. And this is how we can help. If you want to chat with us, please reach out. We have a handful of packages on clutch.co. We have other case studies out there around both AI, but other work that we do. You don't necessarily even have to start here. We can collaborate for an hour or two, kick some ideas around. We like to add value as quickly as possible, and we're open to doing that even in advance of these. So don't let pricing and packages keep you from reaching out to us. If that happens to be a barrier at this point, we want to build relationships in this space, both in Denver and around the US where we are joining from. And these are some of the things that we can bring to the table. And hopefully we've convinced you that we know a little bit of what we're talking about here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. Because we believe in measuring outcomes here at Crafted, just wanted to launch one last poll here before we get to Q&A. Do you feel more confident to take on an AI initiative? Have we helped a little bit, at least shed some light on some new nuances of what it means to design and ship, a Gen AI project? So fill that out really quick.
And Matt, I think we've got a little bit of a Q&A here if we're ready to roll over to that.
Let's do it.
First question's a little bit dear to my heart as someone who learned they were replaced by Debbie Greenfield on the team here. Was how do you monitor for hallucinations, and how have you managed that risk on this project?
Yeah, I think, Kyle, you want to start with talking a little bit about just database logging?
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we are monitoring. We did the usability testing, and we are pumping question and answers into a database that we manage in our AWS infrastructure. We're not sending those. We are, sending question response out to OpenAI, but they have, we have retention policies with them. Again, security needs to be layered onto this space. As an engineer, I think about that a lot. So there's a lot of value in the data and making sure that you're capturing that though, because that is at the end of the day the user experience. That's the data expression of the user experience. And so as with everything in AI, it's not like a set it and forget it type thing. There's value in doing continuous review, continuous updates. Hallucinations from a technical perspective, as far as I understand them, come from sparse data or gaps in data, both when the LLM is trained, but also potentially from gaps in the the additional prompts and instructions going into the LLM. So you can mitigate that with a lot of the strategies that Matt presented around testing it, getting hands-on with it. These are not like magic silver bullets. You need to stay hands-on, play with it yourself, go ask it questions. Don't make changes willy-nilly and assume that GPT 4.0 is better than GPT 4 preview in the context of your business, because that next model that's being released might have indexed on different value propositions for what OpenAI is trying to accomplish with their LLMs, and in the process have potentially worse outcomes for your business because of the model changes, right? So it needs to be monitored, tracked, get hands-on with it. Those are the ways that I think about managing and mitigating hallucination risk.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would add there, just on Kyle's, iterating on your instructions and data, we found some hallucinations, results when we were doing that usability testing, particularly like one was crafted founded. The LLM would go into the corpus and be like, let me find a date that's most likely that. And so it's giving the response that like crafted was founded in 2022. And in reality, right, we were founded much earlier than that. And so, one thing you can do is when you're seeing those responses and you're monitoring, like Kyle mentioned, go in and actually like precede those answers into your corpus, and it'll help answer those questions a lot better.
But 4.0 is 58% better than just regular 4, according to ChatGPT's promotion of the new model release. Another question that I think is a little bit interesting here, and I might take a little answer myself here. How do you integrate an AI chatbot with external APIs and services? Just kind of share a little bit of story of another thing we did here at Crafted that we didn't demo today that might be kind of interesting is so using kind of the same technology, OpenAI's assistant API, if any of you have worked like on the UX side of things, like we've, personas where you have like a photo, here is your potential buyer, here is, where she grew up, here's what she motivates her. For one client, we had a bunch of, we did interviews, we conducted interviews with people about like their habits, and we had transcripts of those interviews. So the corpus for this assistant was transcripts of people discussing the context where they performed a set of interactions. We hooked it up, it was just the OpenAI assistant API, right, and connected it via Zapier. It was pretty much a no-code solution, and you could ask questions about when's the last time you went to the store, and our bot would try to answer it from the corpus of actual user transcripts data. It's the same concept really, but kind of another variation on it. So not to monopolize the conversation, how do you integrate an AI chatbot with external APIs and services? And maybe if, not to call on you, Kyle, a little bit like how we did it on our end here.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one of the core points I would try to hammer home about integrating, like you're going to be running somebody else's LLM, like most likely, just from if you choose to go down this route, from the expense to actually create them, right? When you're reaching for that, somebody's probably going to be hosting or providing that for you, unless you choose to go down a more self-hosted route, which has different challenges. But just from the nature of the space and how quickly it moves, modularity is key. I think in every situation, you want to be able to adopt the newest, because in whatever it was, under 3 months between GPT-4 and 4.0 or 6 months, whatever it is, if it's actually objectively 58% better, and you've tied yourself into a previous model that's hard to modify or it's hard to update, maybe Google goes and, starts performing significantly better for your business use case. You want to be able to swap those models in and out quickly. Building a lightweight API on top of that external service provides additional security, ability to rate limit, protect against malicious actors. It also provides the ability to, if you've created a module inside your API that is fetching from that external service, you can now swap it out, but then the interface to the chatbot hasn't changed at the API layer. So, we have a lightweight API running in our own AWS VPC. It, has, it's hiding our API token from OpenAI, which you don't want to be exposing publicly, which is one of the reasons we stood it up. It's also helping. We were struggling a little bit just from speed and getting to market quickly, integrating with OpenAI's WebSocket infrastructure for the streaming response. We were able to kind of hand roll a quick little queue of pumping out polling responses. So it gives you more control over that user experience of a user gives you feedback that something's slow. Okay, great. If you own enough of the infrastructure in front of the underlying LLM provider, you can then run some knobs and tweaks that allow you to improve that user experience. And so I definitely encourage finding those ways to create your control, safety, security, modularity through that mechanism.
Yeah. And, I know we only have a couple minutes left. So, Matt, there's one more in the question that I think is a really nice way to kind of wind us down here is how do I get buy-in from my leadership team to pursue a Gen A type initiative?
Yeah, I think this one's super interesting. Hear this come up a lot when you're presenting a potential, initiative or project. How do I get buy-in? I think there's a couple of different routes, that we could take here. One is professional development, right? AI, as we proved, or as Deloitte has proved through their survey, and there's a knowledge gap, right? And we need to learn these tools one way or another. And as we've kind of made our case in this presentation, there's no better way than doing. So leverage professional development funds to help actually, fund your OpenAI, budget, or, fund your time that you need to actually go pursue these things. I think professional development is a great way to try this. Pitch a spike, right? A spike directly into your backlog. Talk with your product manager. Hey, we really need to learn AI a bit further. Can I have a spike, time capped to, let's say, 3 days to go pursue what it might mean to actually try out a Gen AI chatbot. And then also explore the internal use case route, because there's a lot of external value as the route that we went, actually customer facing chatbot. But like we talked about before, there's a lot of internal value to this. So use that spike, use those professional development funds to go build something internally. And then, if you want, a partner to help actually go work on those projects and level up even faster, right? Contact Crafted and see how we can get involved and help you all get buy-in as well.
Yeah, I just, want to thank you all for coming. I hope this is, hope it was enlightening. Hopefully there's a sage in all of your future. We really appreciate it. As Matt said, we are going to share this webinar so you can all, after this, so you can kind of all re-listen to it and share it with your teams if you'd like. And if you, reach out to Crafted if you'd like to learn more about how we could partner. But, more excited to hear how all of you can, move forward with this in your own work and day-to-day. So thank you all. We really appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your afternoons. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.